Hello all and welcome back to Season 4 of the FRS. We're here round 7 in Singapore. The halfway point of the season is just now behind us with that break week finish, and we're kicking off the second half of the season under the lights in the street city circuit of Singapore. Before we get ready to get underway, let's take a look at the circuit that we're going to be around today. 5.063 kilometers and 23 corners to navigate on this tough track. 3 DRS zones down a few of the straights here to help promote some overtaking, but overall, you've got to get a really good run out of the previous corners in order to make those moves stick. So it's going to be a tough one to overtake on. Qualifying is going to be also very important, mostly because it's so difficult to qualify with all the walls, and it's a long lap, one of the longest races that we'll see of the season. But let's take a look at where we're at the halfway point of the season in the driver's standings. MJ Povey, back-to-back champion, looking to make it 3 on the trot, out in the lead with 103 points, with Habs fan Nick nipping at his heels on 82 points of their own. QX Nemesis on 64 points in third place, 10 points ahead of Quimulus in fourth. Brenchel rounds out the top 5 with 48 points. You have LC Fighter, El Gloverino, and the Alpha Tauri pairing of Issei and Johan, with Pepmeister rounding out the top 10. Voki sits 11th with 23 points. Cryptic in 12th on 20. Underperforming so far this season, looking to get it back on track. Kem, the Division 2 champion last season, making the promotion, is 13th overall with 19 points. Then you have the stand-in Statman Joe. He has 12 points, just ahead of McLaren teammate Stanier in 15th with 11 points. Mid Falcon, the late season edition, has 10 points to their name, ahead of Backwas Boy, who's shown very good pace, but has shown some pretty poor luck thus far in the season. But now let's take a look at the constructors' standings. Coming into this one, Ferrari, the combination of El Gloverino and House Van Nick, combining for 117 points in the top spot, just 10 points ahead of Williams. Then in third, you have the Aston Martin pairing, making them the third team over 100 points in the Xbox division. McLaren is fourth with 67 points, just ahead of Alpha Tauri on 61. The one-man team of Mercedes has 57 points so far, all those coming from Quimulus. And then Red Bull with Kem in 38 points. Haas is 8th on 33. Alfa Romeo and Alpine round out the constructors' standings here in Xbox Division 1. Now let's get ready to get underway. We're going to jump straight on into qualifying here to get the first runs, and we'll check how we can do. Trying to put together a good lap around here is so difficult. So many corners to have to navigate your way through. But here we are, getting on the throttle, getting ready to start our first flying lap of the session, rather. The tough double left-hander there. Really have to worry about the track limits around here for a city circuit, because you can absolutely get yourself into track limits trouble. Although there's walls all over the place, you can see already through the first opening complex there's lots of curbing and white lines that still leave a little bit of a gap to the walls, so you can in fact run over those track limits lines, unlike Monaco, where if you get over the track limits lines, you are going to get into big trouble. But now down the second DRS zone, hard on the brakes into this left-hander, pitching it in to this kind of infield complex, getting ready to start Sector 2. Now you really have to work the car, tough on the throttle here. The track surface, fairly low grip around here, so it's very easy to get the rear tires spun up. A front right limited track overall, but you do spend a lot of time worrying about how the rear tires are going to grip up, and just trying to keep that front right temperature in the right window is very tough. It's easy to lock up now as you come over the bridge into the hairpin, as you see the back end just getting away from us on throttle. Opening the DRS once again, a short little run, not a great overtaking opportunity, but if you can get somebody to make a mistake in front of you out of the hairpin, you have a very good opportunity. And now you're starting the third sector, so now it's a lot of 90-degree right hand, left hand, right hand, left hand, back and forth. You see the left hander now on the brakes underneath the grandstands here, pitching in over that curb, try and get as close to the wall as you can on the exits, and then the right hander under the freeway bridge there. And then on the throttle, swing it out to the wall, and now this quick little downshift blip of the brakes, pitch the car in to get that double right-hander and just use as much of the track as you can. We go to a 37.5 the first time around, looking to personally get into the mid-36s. I'm sure pull time will be in the low 36s, but here we are, back out on track for our second flying lap of the session. You can see, though, with the lap times, a minute 36, minute 37 kind of range. At race pace, you're closer to a minute 40 and above, which is really long for the 31 laps they're going to take. You see McLaren diving out of the way as we're a little slow through the first couple of corners, but picking up a bit of the delta on the exit. Now it's all about controlling the speed through this long right hander, getting the power down nice and smooth, opening the DRS, and you can see we're just gaining time all the way down this straight as we had that little bit of a better exit. Now it's time to carry the speed as much as you can. You can use some of the curbs around here, straddle that exit curb. Now hard on the brakes, get the car rotated for that first hairpin, first gear hairpin. Little snap of oversteer. Another car pulled off to the side of us. That's an Alpine, I believe, we're going by that time. And now we've gotten the Delta back into the green. So a little slow through the first sector, but definitely plenty of opportunity to improve through the second sector, especially that big oversteer moment we had through the hairpin last time. You can see we're picking up about 1/10 of a second already. Ease it through that hairpin now on the throttle, and you can see gaining so much time. A couple of tenths we lost by having that back end step out. We go purple in the second sector there for this lap here, and now controlling the pace some more, just keeping the car settled in. You have a couple hard right-handers at the very end of the lap, so trying to keep that front right tire in check temperature-wise is going to be crucial, and it's also going to be crucial in the race because having to start the race on those soft compounded tires if you qualify inside the top 10 really, with the heavy fuel load, makes it even harder to control that temperature. So here we are, pitching it in one more time around on the curbing, straddling, opening the DRS for that last little bit. And we go 36.789, improved by nearly 0.8 of a second. And that puts us provisionally P3, but we don't go out for another lap. We maintain that 36.7, and that ends up putting us P7 on the grid. So puts us right there on that fourth row, about 0.8 off of the pole time, which was a 35.9. Golly Mooms returning to the grid for the first time here with the PC divisions being suspended because of the bug issue. But here we are, the 5 red lights are up. We're out on those soft compounded tires, and it's a little bit of a slow getaway. We have Jinx on Williams going around the outside of us. You can see in the rearview mirror, and it's all about tiptoeing through these first couple of corners. Johan slots in right in front of us. Jinx going in all the way to the runoff area, and we're just trying to keep the nose clean. Looks like Brenschel's got a good run on those medium tires. We're going to not leave the door open too much for him. That does cause us to go a little bit deep, and the extra bit of fuel weight gives us some understeer through there. So we're just trying to get through these opening laps, carefully. It's an easy track to make a mistake on where you're going to get yourself into quite a bit of trouble, and the more you can stay error-free around this track, the better your results are going to be, because it's a tough track. It's a much faster overall speed than Monaco is, so the mistakes tend to punish you a little bit more. And you do have a little bit longer run-ups to all the braking zones. But here we are in this nice long train right at the start. Everybody kind of behaving themselves the first time now. On the brakes nice and early for the hairpin this time because of that concertina effect where everything just kind of accordions right up. And one person braking, you can't brake where that car is. You have to brake a little earlier. And you get a long train of cars. You just have to brake so much earlier and be aware as we continue to push our way through the first lap of this race. And a little bit of a lockup from Johan in front of us, but it's not going to be enough running deep in order to let us get a run on him. It's a very tough section of the track to overtake on. So we're just going to go ahead and follow him right through and maintain our position. We dropped one spot from the start with Jinx going around the outside there, but we have managed to stay sandwiched between the Alpha Tauris around this first lap. LC Fighter leading the first lap of the race here as we run out across the start-finish line. In the slipstream, we're going to have a little bit of a pull to the side and look alongside with Johan, but not nearly close enough to make any kind of a lunge on him. Not quite good enough or superior enough on the brakes to make that kind of a move. But we're going to go ahead and try and stay with this pack for these opening couple of stages. So far, everybody's staying out of trouble. Now here we are jumping ahead to lap 4 of 31. The DRS is enabled, and you can see we're selecting to box this lap. Original strategy would have had us come in on lap 5 or 6 to get off the soft tires, but getting stuck in this train, really not any kind of good opportunity to overtake. So we're going to trigger the undercut early. We're going to go early on to the tires and try and make that work, but on straight line, on power through fourth gear, we have a little touch of the wall with the front wing, but it looks like we've managed to dodge any kind of trouble, but that is going to fall us right to the back. Going to get out of the way, let the other cars come through and get back up to racing speed, but a big mistake early on there. We were going to come in that lap and get a new set of tires on anyway, so we're not too worried about the tire condition, but that does put us right away from that group we were trying to undercut and get ourselves ahead of. But now we're going to have to be fighting with all these cars on the hard compounded tires for a moment, but we are going to drop right off the back of them as we're going to come into the pits. We're going to have plenty of clean air, and Cryptic is already a casualty. He's retired his car in the pit lane, so unfortunate for the Williams driver not to continue, but you can see already 40% wear on that front right tire after only 4 laps and one qualifying hot lap there. So really beating up these soft tires. They weren't going to go much further than lap 6. So coming in early is not going to be a big issue for us. But now we are definitely in a fair bit of repair mode as Chuck has a bit of a moment exiting the final couple of corners, but not something we're going to overtake on. It's a very awkward pit entry here. Really tight both entry and exit, and it's a low pit lane speed, 37 miles an hour. You have to be very careful entering that, not to speed in that pit lane. But here we are, medium tires going on. The 2-stop strategy is the prime strategy. You can do a 1-stop and medium onto hard. That is a little bit quicker, but with only 15 or 14 cars on the grid, only 4 cars had the free tire choice. And since we had to start on the softs, there's really no way to go soft hard to the end. You do need to go a little bit deeper, as you can see. Now this tight pit exit and just gone a little bit wide over there. Luckily only a warning for crossing the white lines there. We didn't really gain anything from it, but it's just barely wider than an F1 car to get through there. But let's jump ahead now. Lap 9 of 31. We're in 11th place, and we've closed up to the DRS range of Johan. So that is one of the Alpha Tauris that we were following earlier on. Same with Issei, 27 seconds back of us, so must have had a wing change issue early on in the race for him. So we are right up behind the car we were originally going to try and undercut. He has made his pit stop, and we've been trying to reel him in at this stage, but pace-wise seems very similar between the two of us here, 10 laps into this 31-lap race. Now it is definitely a grueling race because it is such a high lap count for the lap distance, or rather lap time. It's a slower lap time than most of the other 4 and 5 kilometer tracks, but having to do 31 laps here with lap times in the 1 minute 40 range is it adds up pretty aggressively, close to about an hour of just straight race time on this 50% distance race. And so you're just going to continue to try and manage the tires around here. It goes a little bit deep with the understeer as we are fighting it just a little bit and making quite a lot of brake balance and differential changes over the course of this lap. We typically had some trouble with rear locking in a lot of the hairpin type corners. So we kept the brake balance for the most part, slid up as high as 58%. Now through this final sector with all these right angle corners, we decided to go 57%. We had a bit of a moment on our first out lap where we almost got into the wall of the 2 corners we just went through, and it became because of a front end lockup. So we started sliding that brake balance just a touch rearward in that corner because it seemed to trigger some front locking more than the other corner. Go back up to 58% there. And now we're going to jump ahead a little bit further. Lap 14 of 31. You can see we're still up behind this pair. Still up behind Johan. We've now moved into 10th place overall as one car has pitted and come in. And you see Johan is closed right up to Chuck, who was just in front of us when we made our pit stop. He's still out on those hard compounded tires. So we've made up that entire pit stop's gap to him, the driver starting on those hard compounded tires. For this race, and now really we're just kind of trying to see if we can get out of this DRS train, because we really can't make an overtake on Chuck until Johan makes an overtake and allows us to close up to the back of Chuck, because it's just not long enough to have 2 cars go by, and we really are having to play it safe and lift into a lot of corners to avoid getting into the back of Johan. He has a bit of a moment, comes across the track, lucky to save it on that one, but able to recover the car, get it back up to speed as we exit the corner, and you can see that DRS wide open on both us and the Alpha Tauri in front as he's closing, but not quite enough to make the lunge, so hard on the brakes for us to avoid going into the back end of Johan. And Johan on the grippier medium tires should have an opportunity to try and set up Chuck for a good run, but Chuck doing a very good job managing the pace of those hard tires and just getting good exits. So running behind this group, we decide once again, all right, we're going to box early. We're going to come in. Original plan was to come in lap 16 or 17 and go the remaining way, but we go ahead and go for an earlier pit stop once again. We're going to have to go 16 laps to the end. We're about 2 laps ahead of schedule. But in order to just get clear of this group, because it's going to be so difficult to make the overtakes happen. And finally, Johan gets through, and now we are all over the back end of Chuck. But he's going to have DRS off of Johan if Johan is not able to make up a 1 second gap before the next detection point, which is coming. A little bit of contact with the back of Chuck there. He was a little slower on the apex. No harm, no foul, though. He gets a little loose, and we avoid some wing damage as it stays right ahead. But you can see not quite able to clear that 1 second gap. So Chuck would have that DRS help down the front straight, and so we definitely choose, all right, now is the time to trigger the final stop. Interesting, luckily no safety cars this far into the race. We had a fairly clean race over the course of that day, but once again, the undercut is fairly strong, and the undercut, of course, getting on a fresher, unworn set of tires to go out and do a faster lap on those fresh tires than people have on the worn tires out in front of you. So that way, when they stay out, they do a lap or two on those more worn tires, and you have a lap or two to go faster. And when they come in and make their pit stop, you are then able to jump over them. But here we are on the pit exit. We've got an AlphaTauri closing us down. Has the momentum down the start-finish straight. We are careful not to pick up another warning. And while trying to make an undercut on an AlphaTauri, we come out behind the AlphaTauri of Issei, who is on those hard compounded tires, carrying 6 seconds of time penalties as well, as we pick up a track limits warning. But really, we wanted as much as we could clean air in order to try and race. But here we are closing, having a little look to the inside, but we've got to back out of it. Issei gives us room. He didn't have to, but we had fully backed out. We weren't alongside there, and unfortunately this is going to hurt our chances of making that undercut work, because we really need the clean air in order to go as fast as these tires will allow. And now not only are we stuck up behind a slower compounded tire, the hard tire, those tires have been out on track for a couple of laps, and we're going to see if we can't get a good run off of the next corner, see if we can get the next DRS zone to stick for us. But it's a really short DRS zone, and we have big understeer coming through the apex of that, and that really compromises our ability to get the car straightened out and on power. And here we are closing using the slipstream, but again, not close enough. He has a lockup, and that's costing us big time on the undercut. So the strategy move appears to not be paying off so far in this one, as we're down to 12th place. But we are some of the earliest stoppers when it comes to getting our final set of tires on. We should be able to take the final 15 laps or so to the end of the race. As you see, Jinx now in the pit lane, according to our timing screen. Looks like he's going to come out well ahead and have plenty of time. But here we are trying to set up Issei once again. He gets a little bit of a better run to that quick one. And now here with the DRS open, closing, overtake on into the inside on the brakes. And there we go, making the move stick on the AlphaTauri driver. Try and minimize the damage we had from following him. But unfortunately, doing it in basically an entire lap was really going to cost us. We're going to jump ahead now a few more laps as we are coming up on the back marker of Kem on lap 18 of 31. And we are going to get the DRS off him. He is ghosted from being a lap down, so we're going to be able to just drive straight on through him there. And then we are closing up on Chuck, who runs deep through that corner and rather nicely doesn't rejoin and try to defend his position. He just cuts right to the runoff area and allows us through. And now we're up in the 8th place overall, with about a 6 second gap to Brenschel out ahead of us. Lap 19 of 31 in this race here, and we are sitting basically mid-pack. One more position to get back to where we started, but after the early mistake, it seems we have an opportunity to still cash a few points here for the race weekend. Unfortunately, not the top 3 kind of finish that we've seen in the last few races, but solid points is going to be very important for us overall, and you never know what can happen in the closing stages of a race. But we are closing on Brenschel rapidly, already down to 3.4 seconds. He's got damage out ahead of us, so he is not only going to be very slow and give us the opportunity to overtake him potentially before the start of the next lap, he is going to have to come into the pit lane. It's now down to 2.7 seconds, and of course a DRS detection point for the start-finish straight is before the cars pull into the pit lane there, so we have an opportunity to try and chase him down, get inside the DRS detection zone, and have that little bit of extra straight line speed down the front straight when we have totally clear air in front of us to set a good lap and get on after P6 and YNXO, which is also known as Jinx, out ahead in that Williams, who has made that cheeky move across the runoff on lap 1 work for him. But here we are around the final corners with that DRS now available as Brenschel is into the pit lane. We got a 12.8 second gap to Jinx ahead. Haps Van Nick up in 5th place, running up ahead of us. But now we're going to jump ahead a couple more laps, lap 24 of 31, and if you take a look at the car itself, you'll see some streaks. There is rain starting to fall on this one, so it definitely got more interesting towards the end of the race, as now with only 7 laps left to go in this race, we have the rain starting to fall on the track. It's a very light rain so far, but it is starting to rob the track of some grip. Haps Van Nick had to make a pit stop and came in, fitted the soft tires behind us, and was starting to close up on us. And now, of course, as the track gets more slippery and gets colder, it's harder to keep the temperatures in the tires. Those soft tires are easier to build temperature in. So he has an opportunity, if the rain comes down at a modest rate, to close up. But here we are jumping a few laps ahead now, lap 29 of 31. You can see it is coming down quite a bit harder. The track surface looking very shiny and reflective, but still not quite at that crossover point for inters. We see Issei in P8, about 1 minute and 3 seconds behind us. And he's been about that gap, since he came into the pit lane. So very similar performance at the level of wetness between the intermediate and the slick tire at this point. And Haps Van Nick, with wing damage, you see having to take a pit stop, and is going to have to grab intermediate tires just to try and hope that it rains harder. But Jeff had been on the radio saying that it was going to be about a 10-minute burst of rain, and it has persisted a few laps, and the track may start to lighten up and dry up. But at this point, we did pick up a 3 seconds track limits penalty. You can see in the top left there. And we are about 15 seconds off of Jinx. So with only 2 laps left to go in this one, it's just all about keeping the car nice and safe, with Nick having to make that extra pit stop. Could have been set up for an opportunity to try and chase us down. There's an armful of opposite lock to steer the car back into behavior. But now we're going to jump ahead. Lap 31 of 31. Backwash Boy DNFs because of a time penalty disqualification. You can see that 37 seconds. Once you get over 30 seconds, you are disqualified. Backwash Boy disqualified from the lead of the race. Made too many mistakes in the wet, and that has cost him big time, and that has promoted us up to 5th place overall on this final lap. We have 35 seconds back to Nick behind. You can see Issei still about that 1 minute 3 seconds, so staying on the slick tires, as you can see, barely raining now on the track, drying out. But MJ Povey crossing the line, taking the race win, and a very firm hold on the championship for sure. Golly Mooms is in 3rd. LC Fighter was in 2nd place, and Jinx in 4th, just off the podium there, fighting with Golly Mooms all the way to the end, picking up that extra 3 seconds. They were on 6 seconds apiece until the final lap. Then Jinx picked up one more set. We crossed the line on our medium tires, and after an early spin, coming across in P5 overall. But here's your podium. MJ Povey coming out to the applause. You have LC Fighter in the Aston Martin, making up well for his absent teammate QX Nemesis, who had a hardware problem. Hardware and software. And of course, Golly Mooms returning from PC Division 3 back onto the Xbox Division 1 grid while that division is suspended pending a fix for the PC version of the game, but back on the podium in his return to Xbox One. Your final running order: MJ Povey, LC Fighter, and Golly Mooms making up your podium positions. Jinx in P4, ourselves Quimulus in P5, Haps Van Nick 6th place, Issei in 7th, Jahan in 8th, Brenschel in 9th, and Stanier picking up points to round out the top 10. Cameron Slater in 11th, Backwas Boy in 12th, Kem in 13th, Chuck SRQ in 14th, and Cryptic is your only DNF of the race. But now let's take a look at the driver standings after this one. MJ Povey extending his lead at the top, 128 points now. Habs fan Nick still maintains that second position on 90, and QX Nemesis and Quimbulus now tied on points on 64 apiece. LC Fighter with that podium moves up into P5 to help out the Aston Martin pairing on 56 points. Brenschel now on 50 points of their own, a nice round number. Isse and El Gloverino making up P7 and 8, 2 points separating them and only 1 point back further to Johan in 9th. Pepmeister rounds out the top 10, 10 points further back, with Voki only 1 more point back in 11th. Cryptic fails to score once again and maintains 12th position on 20 points overall. Chem holds down P13 with 19 points as Jinx's good result there moves them up the tables to 14th with 17 points. And Golly picking up 15 points on his Season 4 debut for Xbox moves him into 15th place overall. Statman Joey is in 16th, and then Stanier with his 1 point moving up into 17th. Next up, we'll take a look at how that's changed the Constructors' standings coming up. And it is no longer Ferrari at the top. The strength of Williams finally starting to push their way through. MJ Povey carrying that team up to 145 points ahead of the Ferrari pairing on 125. Aston Martin's strong weekend gives them up to 121 points. And Mercedes on the strength of Quimulus's points up to 77, getting that little bit of a boost for having no teammate scoring at all in this season. In P5, we have AlphaTauri on 71 points. And then P6 McLaren just 1 point further back on 70. Red Bull is in 7th with 53, with Haas on 33, and Alfa Romeo 9th on 29 points, and Alpine still in 10th on 21 points, not picking up anything more this weekend. It was definitely an interesting race. We are back going forward for the second half of the season, and there's a change to the schedule, so I won't put the schedule and calendar up on there. We are no longer going to Suzuka next weekend with the patch of the game and the update and Portimao being added to it. We have swapped out, so Portimao in Portugal is going to be the race next weekend out, and then of course we have the remainder of the calendar coming up, and we should see Imola making an arrival before the end of the season as well, which should hopefully come with the patch that gives a fix to PC. But thanks for all for joining me once again. Y'all have a good one. Peace.